the best way to get started into your corpus of all your work you've done so far is with the tweet. Maybe I'll just read out the tweet for people that haven't heard of you, and I'm thinking that could be a good sort of prelude into what you're doing, what you're planning to do. And I really want to talk about your book and all of that. So I'll just read it out. So you posted this in 2021, December 28th. You said, I posted a black square last summer and was completely engulfed into identity politics and wokeism. This was last July. So I'm assuming July 2021.
2020.
July 2020. It's absolutely amazing what can happen when you begin educating yourself, admit you were wrong, and allow the old you to die. If I can do it, so can you. And that's how I found you, man. It's through this tweet went viral. So yeah, Kyle, just what led you to tweeting this, and like, what's your story?
First, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. And what led me to tweet that? I'm not sure what led me to tweet it. I think I have my Twitter account. I have it in my bio. I tweet things to encourage people to think. So I just like I've always shared my ideas on social media. Been doing it for a while, since like 2017. I just tweet my thoughts. Instead, for the specific one, I just was just randomly during the day. It's like, you know what? Life. I used to succumb to a lot of that woke stuff, and I got myself out. And I knew if I could do it, who's to say no one else can? And to dive a little deeper into that, what I meant, if someone's like, what does that even mean? So in 2020 in the United States, I don't know how serious it was in Australia, but the world got really, really political and really polarized in the year 2020. This was the coronavirus. That's when the BLM protests. I'm not too sure how it was. Was it as bad in where you're at, or was it some?
Look, Mike, compared to the US, we were like very, very tepid. And one thing I like about, because I'm a migrant here too, I grew up in Sri Lanka. And one thing I love about Australia is it's very apolitical, sort of nonchalant kind of culture. People really don't talk politics much, which, it's got its bad sides too, because it leads to ignorance, but people get along. But, it's like that saying, right? When America sneezes, the whole world catches a cold. So whatever happens in America, especially heavily influenced.
That's a great quote.
Yeah, I don't know where I heard it. I think my dad.
Where'd you get that one from?
I think my dad told this to me when I was like growing up. Yeah, because that's how. Yeah, because that's like the cultural. It's like a cultural hegemony, right? So it's got so much influence. Yeah. But no, man. Yeah, to answer your question, it wasn't as bad, but we did have some. Protests, and especially with like we've had a dark past with the indigenous people here in Australia, and as a response to that. But no, to answer your question, it wasn't as serious.
Okay. Yeah, well, in the U.S., there were people in the streets. It was just riots every night, cities being burnt down, people just acting like lunatics, and believe it or not, I got sucked into. Let me not incriminate myself here. I didn't burn anything down. I wasn't that crazy yet. But I was sympathetic towards the overall ideology that was starting to spread. And I get ahead of myself. So let me try my best to stay on track here. So the things that I was buying into, and the ideas that were being perpetuated at that time, and sort of still are, is the idea of racism. Is the idea of specifically systemic racism. These ideas that culture is not culture. Yeah, culture in a way is tailored and is from within upholding a systemic favorites and a systemic, what's the word I'm looking for? Privileging a specific group of people,
Yeah.
and it is purposely in is purposely dispossessing another group of people.
Yeah.
That is what the idea that was spreading during that time. And what set that off was the George Floyd incident when
Coast.
Officer Chauvin was on his neck and he died.
Yeah.
That just blew the whole world. Like, that just literally, it just set everyone on fire. And let me not make a strong man out of this. That pissed off a lot of people. Everyone had a right to be upset about that.
It was
now what happened? Yeah, what happened after that? And the really conservative right was, some people were a little heartless on that situation, looking back on it like, oh well, if he was listening, like, we don't need any of that. We need to be in the middle and try to be objective with as much things as possible. But that incident just blew up everything. And this ideology isn't new. It's group identity.
Yeah.
But it really started spreading, and I got sucked into it, and millions of other people got sucked into it as well. And one of the things that is so sad about ideology and politics and stuff is that it possesses people who necessarily weren't even political, and people become victimized to it, who necessarily don't even or never even believed in the tenets until they were presented towards them. So, for instance, I used to run a record label. I was a capitalist. I used to make money. I'm an entrepreneur before 2020.
Yeah.
I used to work with white people, brown people, and Hispanic people. I had my business partner was LGBT. Like, I was just doing my thing. And then this movement, it's so scary to think like I was in it. Like, that was I had my fist in the air. I posted the black square.
Yeah. Yeah.
I parroted the same talking points. Do you think you would have been any different in the 20th century in Germany? Do you think you would have been any different in Cambodia? Do you think you would have been any different in Cuba? Do you think you would have been any different in Maoist China or the Soviet Union? Do you think you would have been any different? And if you think that, you are most susceptible to being just drowned into that.
Absolutely.
I wasn't aware. I wasn't aware of that. So to tie up this question, that tweet was, I got myself out, and maybe we can go into that. But I got myself out. And the meaning of that tweet, I think it blew up the way it did because Twitter is just Twitter's an odd platform. Kind of favors the political tweets.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it does, because some stupid tweets blow up. I'm like, why is this trending? But I think it blew up because a lot of people resonated with it. A lot of people of color, I hate using that phrase, resonated with it as well. Because I think a lot of us are waking up to these lies. And we're waking up to what's really going on.
Yeah.
There is no better place than where we're at right now in America. I'm just going to stay that open. We understand we don't want to be anywhere else. We need to appreciate where we're at now and not look back at history in vain. We got here through the blood, sweat, and tears of our ancestors. It was a romanticism about the civil rights era. That's what 2020 was about. People in the street with picket signs and placards and marching and chants. They were romanticizing the civil rights era. They were trying to replicate that, to have a sense of belonging. And we mimicked that. We tried to mimic that again. And when you do that, you undermine. First of all, you undermine everything that they actually did. Like, think about it this way. yeah, there was clips of policemen and stuff, but those people who were marching on Washington, they were getting hosed down by police. When was that happening here? They weren't getting hosed down by police just because they were protesting. They were getting hosed down and chased and bit and getting having the canine unit sent after them, not because they were protesting, but because of their skin color.
Yeah.
That's why they were getting. That's why those ramifications were there, not because they're just a protester. So you have to understand. You have to understand. You have to contextualize this. We're out here protesting the police for doing their job. They were protesting against the system for not doing that. There's a difference. You're supposed to do your job not because of someone's skin color. You're supposed to enforce the law not because you don't like the person. Not because you're supposed to pull somebody over and not pull them over because you know him. You're supposed to do your job objectively and try to discern within the moment, within the context, what's the best proper use of force, what's the best, how's the best way to conduct the situation. And we can pervert the whole. I'm rambling now, but anyway.
No, I keep going.
That's why everyone got so upset about the police. Not even over to hear about the police anymore, because it was a superficial movement that, essentially driven by BLM around the election year, and now they disappeared. And now more than disappeared. Now BLM is apparently not even an organization anymore. Patrice Fuller, she's one of the founders. She's living it up in Soho or LA, wherever she is, one of her giant mansions. I don't know what she's doing now. She suffered zero ramifications from it. So these ideological movements, they come in, they're not new. They come in and they suck people in. And what gets people out is educating themselves, is to understand what is really going on underneath the surface, like what is really going on. And that's the journey I'm on now, is trying to articulate how does one pay attention to what is really going on, and how does someone stave off ideology and stave off these parasitic ideas. What are the tools necessary to not get sucked in, because it's a lot easier than people think to get sucked into those ideas. That's the meaning behind the tweet.
Yeah, that's because I think you made some really perspicacious points there, because I took down some notes while you were talking, because I obviously didn't want to interrupt you. You used the word possessed, and I think, I don't know if this is Jung who first, whether I read it in one of Jung's books or maybe even Jordan Peterson, but I was wondering if you could, because it's interesting, right? You said you're an entrepreneurial dude, you're a capitalist, as you called yourself. So I'm sure you were sort of self-motivated, driven, and it's not easy running a business, not at all. And then along with that, you had this other sort of social movement that possessed you. And correct me if I'm wrong, Carl, would you say that because of this, because this ideology possessed you, that you felt this kind of existential guilt to even, let's say, be a part of the capitalist structure or be a part of broader American society, because you felt that it was the essence of American society was this evil, racist system?
I didn't feel guilt per se for having a business, because you have to understand, most of the corporations in the United States now, they're corporations, but they're repeating. It's an offshoot of stakeholder capitalism. It's an offshoot of that, but there's a political injunction. So these corporations, in order to not lose their customer base, in order to keep their employees, in order to keep their businesses functioning, systems can get hijacked. So we abuse the efficiency of self-regulating systems to push an agenda. So keep that in mind. But these businesses like Nike, Adidas,
Yeah.
Disney, ESPN, all those businesses, Apple, Microsoft, they, in order to keep their customer base, they have to what's the word I'm looking for? They have to appease that group of people. So they have to virtue signal, and they have to make it seem like to put out diversity statements. We're doing everything we can to make sure that there's a 50% of BIPOC ladies or whatever that is over here, and there's a specific amount of there's a specific proportion of brown people over here. They have to give out these quotas. They set these quotas, DEI. They have to feed into all this stuff so they can continue to keep their business afloat. And so that's what we started doing. So with my label, we started posting black squares. We started posting, go out and vote. We started posting these things so we can continue to have our base, so we can not make it look like we're not with this whole movement. And this is it's high school. It's group identity. If we want to get to the root of this, the root of these movements are group identity. It is like you can't get deeper in that, and underneath of that is the ideological framework. But one of the outgrowths of ideology is a group identity. So, for instance, if you can think about everyone in tribes, because we're tribal creatures, we're social creatures, we get in tribes. If you look through this through an evolutionary sense, one of our main goals as human beings is to stay alive and to continue the species, is to continue ourselves. And one of the things about human beings that our brain uses this, that's what a living thing is. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. That is what it means to be an organism. We produce ourselves. How did you get here? Well, your parents had sex. How did your parents get here? Their parents had sex. That's what human beings are. We reproduce. They spread. It's the same way your brain works as well. If something were to happen, or you were to hit your head, or you were to forget something, the neuroplasticity, that is your brain's ability to self-repair itself. Exactly. It's self-repairing. You can remember. It's like, how do you forget something? Like, you knew it. Where did it come from when you remember something? Where the hell did it come from? Your brain it's a self-fixing thing. When you bleed and you're literally bleeding, what do? Your red blood cells, they group up at the point of what's called the wound, and they repair themselves. The tissue repairs itself and they become skin. They're a living thing. Things that are self-perpetuating, they have the ability to reproduce.
Yeah.
But those things, what affects those things are viruses. What affects those things are parasites. So you can think of systems, you can think of social systems are the same exact way. What happens when there is a parasite, aka an ideology, a bad idea, especially coming from the CEO or someone who's in top in power, as they're saying, our highest value is diversity. Let's break that apart. What does that mean? That means that we value the unchangeable characteristics, the immutable characteristics of human beings over the well-being of our company. That is what we value most. You can choose whatever highest value you want. You can make your highest value revenue. You can make your highest, what you should if you're a business. You can make your highest value well-being of your customers. You can make your highest value speed. If you're Amazon, if you're smart, you can make your highest value getting your product as soon as possible. Or you can make your highest value making Black people feel good. You can make your highest value whatever you want. I mean, dead serious, dude. You can make it whatever you want to be.
Yeah.
But it comes with a price. So what does that mean? Let's say our highest value is skin color in our company. So what does that mean? Let's say we're a marketing agency. We'll use Australia. Jogga 5. Let's say we're a marketing agency, And let's say we just won an award for we had the best commercial ever. We shot a commercial for, I don't know, Barcelona. We shot a commercial for that. And it was the best commercial ever.
Yeah.
Now, if your highest value is diversity, all those people who made that commercial, there were no Black people on that team. Oh my God, you evil piece of evil. There was no Black people on the team. So now we're going to start shifting people on the team. Oh well, now we have to include this Black person. Now we have to put in this Black person to make it fair, because our highest value is skin color, right? Our highest value is skin color, not the productive outcome of the system. It's skin color. So once you make that your highest value, now this is what we care about, this more than we care about the actual business. And this thing, going back to the self-regulating systems, this thing produces itself, because now these people get in the positions now. These people get in the positions who only care about skin color. And the people who don't, what happens to them? They say, F this job, I'm not going to do this anymore, and they get out. That's how these systems expand, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger, because the people who don't want to play this game, they go somewhere else. And so eventually you have an entire system of ideological bastards, who only it is a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's this one homogenous unit, and it doesn't like any heterogeneity at all. If you have one thing that you have one particular opinion that runs contrary to this entire system, what does your body do when something like that happens? It kicks it out.
Yeah.
That's what you are inside of this system. And I'm not trying to sound like freaking like a conspiracy theorist, like a apocalyptic like guru here. I'm being dead serious. That's how these things work.
Yeah.
So you understand this. It's not even. It's like this. This is how this works.
Yeah.
What do you do about that? Make your own thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I really like. I think it was apocryphally attributed to Kierkegaard. He says, when you label me, you negate me, and in some sense, it's like I like the distinction you make between group identity and individual identity. But Carl, again, I'm only doing this because I want to extract the most of who you are as a person, like really what the essence of your ideas are. And I'm not trying to like just disagree for the sake of disagreeing. I find it interesting because I myself, I had a phase when I was about 19 or 20 where I deeply, well, probably even a bit younger than that actually, where I deeply bought into the let's say the modern progressive dogmas, sort of prima facie. I didn't question any of it. It's kind of like, I'm a part of, I moved to Melbourne, a very cosmopolitan progressive city. I was like, I'm a part of the progressives here. I might as well buy into it. And then I went very much to the right, but more than I liked. I went to like the kind of like the Ben Shapiro, the American conservative kind of right. And now I've come a lot more to the left again. So I too had like a bit of, let's say, ideological oscillations in my views. And I want to, look, I got a lot of notes on what you were saying, because, I'm glad that you brought up the term ideology, because that was really something I wanted to, delve deep into. So let me put it this way. When you mean that these certain groups of people are possessed by an ideology, and as a result, so what you call an ideology is like a virus, and then these, let's say, corporations or these entities, they become kind of like a being of their own, self-perpetuating, and they grow and they kick out any dissenters, pretty much like in any authoritarian regime, right?
Yeah.
But so what does it mean to be a non-ideological person?
It's a great question. Now, I'm trying to find the best way to answer this. I don't really identify with any party. I'm not a Democrat, I'm a Republican. I'm more of the classic liberal type, libertarian. I'm in the middle. And I think that let me explain it this way. Everyone worships something. There is no. I'm going to use the shadow, or this will be a good example. So, as you know, Yo talks about the shadow,
Mm,
but you don't. You don't. He never said you get rid of it. You don't get rid of your shadow. You have
integrate.
to. You have to integrate the shadow. I look at. You can think about ideology in your viewpoint of the world the same exact way. You don't necessarily take ideology by the neck and toss off the side. I don't think that's the right way of looking at it. You have to integrate it, because what all an ideology is I define it as a rigid belief system that refuses to update itself.
Mm,
That's how I define ideology. And I don't think that you get rid of it. I think it's like the shadow. I think you have to integrate that part of you that dedicates itself to finding the truth. Because if you think about it, if you think about it as that, an ideology is it's something that wants to self-perpetuate itself. It wants to give life to something.
mm.
You can put anything in this ideology machine. You put race, you put you can put gender in it, you can put skin color in it, you can put freaking anything you want in it.
Yep.
Sexuality in there, you can put anything you want into this. And what separates an ideologue from someone who thinks independently is the person who thinks independently or thinks that they think independently is aware of the dangers of succumbing to this ideology. It's about knowing the danger of it. You're integrating that shadow. I was watching this interview with John Vervaeke. John Vervaeke had a
Love
conversation
it.
with Jordan
Love
Edwards.
it. Huge fan.
Dude, brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was talking with his student, Anderson Todd. You have to check that guy out.
Is this the one on
Todd.
Call You? Is this a
Yeah.
conversation on You? I think I watched it a while ago, but I can't recall
Yeah.
many points. Yeah.
Great conversation. And he brought up something that I didn't know about. Apparently, there was something called a golden shadow.
Golden shadow.
When we think about integrating the shadow, when we think about the shadow period, we think of repressing kind of like all the malevolent things about ourselves, our deep, dark temptations, all the things that we don't want to accept. And we push those things out.
Things we're ashamed of.
Yeah. And one of the things that Anderson Todd said, he articulated this perfectly. He said, you don't get rid of the shadow, you integrate it. Because once you put it out, when you project your shadow, the more you push those things out, the more autonomous those things become. So
Wow.
if I'm a terrible person, but I don't want to accept that. So I'm gonna project that out. I'm gonna say, every time I'm a bad person, it wasn't me who did that. It was because Rahul, he was so bad that he made me get angry. I'm always projecting that thing out, always projecting it out. It's never Kyle who actually did something bad. So that's kind of how we always think about the shadow. But he talks about the golden shadow. So that could be, Joe talks about the golden shadow. So that could be, let's say that you are a terrible person. You're bad. You're full of resentment, anger, jealousy, anything anything you name it. You're breeding on it. What you're repressing, you also could be repressing all the positive aspects about yourself. You're wanting to be a good person. You could be repressing your humility. You could be repressing and projecting your honesty. You could be projecting all the good things about yourself. These things don't go away. They become non-integrated. And what someone has to do is they have to learn how to accept. Because think about it, you're projecting, you're a bad person, you're projecting everything out. You haven't accepted yourself that you can be a good person. You haven't accepted it in yourself that, or you could be saying, well, if I do decide to be a good person, and you can develop a really cynical idea about what it means to be a good person. You can force yourself to be disgusted by it. Oh well, good people, they're all naive. Or they're all just, they're not living in the real world. It's like you see people get into that real cynical, and it's a cheap form of wisdom.
Lazy, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lazy morality. It's like I'm gonna claim just I'm gonna claim support superior wisdom by not engaging in the world. That's pretty much what the cynic is saying.
Yeah.
So I'm projecting every good thing. I'm berating every good thing I see. If someone gave someone money, oh they were just trying to get ahead.
Yeah.
They were just getting over on that person. I think someone opened the door for someone. Oh well, he just thought she looked good. That's the only reason why he did it. And it works the same exact way. And I think, and to answer your original question, whereas separate what's someone who isn't ideological, someone who doesn't think ideologically, they have properly integrated that side of them that wants to hold on to information and not listen to the outside world. And I think this is one of the key tenets to becoming an individual. Because I'm gonna tell you a story. So it's kind of dark here. When I was a young kid, I got jumped. Is that a word Australians use?
It is a word. I know. I mean, it's not really much, but I know what. Hey, man, American culture.
Yeah, jumping is like we were at the park one day, and I was with I'm writing about this in my book as an introduction. So you're getting like a sneak peek. So we were all just chilling in the park one day, and so I'll give you more details. Me and this one kid, we had like an argument about something, and we were just kind of going back and forth. It wasn't anything huge, but their family didn't like how I was talking to their relative. So a couple of days went by, and we all were hanging out in this park one day, and everyone was around me. We were all laughing, we were all having a good time, but everyone was kind of. And now I understand it now, but I couldn't back then. I was in the middle, and everyone was kind of just staring there. Everyone was kind of face toward me, and they had their phones out. But I didn't. I don't hate myself for not realizing it, but I can't understand how I didn't see this. They all were kind of around me, kind of waiting for something. So we were all just just talking, doing what kids do. And this dude comes from my right, knocks me in my face. I fall down, and there's 3 people kicking and punching me, like just literally beating me up. And people are around recording it and laughing. I'm just completely humiliated. And they're talking, stuff. Yeah, that's why that's why you shouldn't talk. Just saying this most egregious things. And I get myself up, and everyone's kind of just. What do you do in that situation? You just got beat up in front of like 20 people. What do you do in that situation?
And they
I
recorded.
got up. I'm disoriented. I don't know what the heck has happened. That happened in like 5 seconds. It was like 5 seconds. And I get up, and I'm just like, I just don't know what I'm doing right now. So I went to my relative. Luckily, lived down the street, so I got some ice because I had a giant knot on my forehead. But the reason why I tell you that situation is because if someone were driving by and looking at that, they would have no idea that kid was about to get beat up. And I think at that age, I realized not only were these people not my friends, I was clearly they weren't my friends, because if they actually were my friends, they would have told me. They would have said, "Yo, you're about to get beat up. Maybe you should leave." So at that moment, not only did I realize that what I believed could be at any moment proven wrong, but also be the complete opposite. That's what I learned at a very young age. And ever since then, and still until this day, I haven't really told many people this. I'm constantly looking and studying people and looking at their actions and trying to understand where someone's coming from.
Yeah.
ever since that day, I have developed a superior level of what is even the word I'm looking for, of studying people, of understanding the motivations, knowing what they're doing next.
Yeah.
Because in that moment, I thought I was surrounded by my friends. That
Mm.
nowhere I just got beat up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
You can take that same thing in life. Just because someone's smiling at you, that could indicate happiness. Let's look at a smile. So that can indicate someone's happy. They're getting a good dopamine rush, and they're expressing that through their facial, through their facial expression. They're expressing that. A serial killer stabbing and gutting a 3-year-old is smiling too. A sadomasochist would be smiling as well. Let's go look at laughter. What can laughter indicate? That you have a great sense of humor. Ha ha ha. That's what laughter is. A evil rapist is laughing as well while he's raping his victim.
Yeah.
And tosses her in a ditch somewhere, never for that woman to never be found again.
Yeah.
He thought that was funny.
Yeah.
The police battalion 101. They when they were killing the Jews, they were laughing.
Yeah.
You pig. They were laughing. They thought it was funny.
Yeah.
So what is laughing? There's two sides here, and someone who's an ideologue, they see one side. When you are not an ideologue, you see both sides, and you arm yourself with the ability to not blind yourself to either one.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, what's interesting is, Kyle, you when you were talking, you used the term context, right? And I really like that word. I try to sort of embody that into, let's say, my seeking too. Hey man, by the way, thanks a lot for sharing that, because that would have been quite dark for you. I've never had an experience like that, but I can imagine how something like that could just shatter your idea of reality in some sense. And it can be it can be a daunting task to, once again, bring yourself, or like to lift yourself back up from that and keep living, like I and this is probably where I kind of disagree with Nietzsche. Nietzsche says that which does not kill you, I think beyond good and evil, that which does not kill you makes you stronger. Hey, but look, mate, sometimes things just kill you, there's no making you stronger. Like sometimes things just ruin people and they traumatize people. So, but hey, thanks for sharing that. But because the idea of context, like, it's really easy for especially some of the anti-woke crew to be very dismissive of the postmodernists, casually dismissive, and I can see the reasons for it, because the postmodernists made some rather radical claims. And firstly, it's the labyrinth of their work. It's even hard to make sense of what they're trying to say. And that probably is the point of postmodernism, ironically. But I do agree with, at least at a literary level, this idea of context. And because, you spoke about how an ideologue doesn't see context. They just see things as I guess they project their ideology onto the world, and then they're like, okay, this is how the world looks.
Ideology makes the complex self-evident.
Yeah, beautifully put. Can you repeat that one more time, please? Ideology makes the
complex self-evident. It makes what is complex. So to break that down.
Yeah, please do.
I was talking with Benjamin Boyce. I was on his podcast. That's the first time I really said this. I've had this little. That's how I remember things. I have like little sayings or whatever.
Yeah, no, same, mate. Yeah.
And so we think about like heuristics. So basically, these are models to save mental resources and to construe the world down into bites. So, because think about it, we make representations of things all the time.
Absolutely.
I was just talking. I was literally on a podcast today. Like, for instance, we will create outlines of things, and we can't really see them. So James J. Gibson, he wrote this book. I'm reading the book as an ecological approach to visual perception.
Yeah,
really cool book.
Peterson recommends it, right?
Yeah, one of the things that we were talking about. So the in the visual and the optic array, this is what is, and this is what is in front of me. We create outlines of objects that necessarily don't that we can't even see. So, for instance, if there was like a figure in front of this tree outside of my room right now, that there was a square on top of here, the angle that is above the top line of the square, I can in my mind I can place the image of a tree. I can still see that tree through this square. And when you think about it like that, this is what the depth it's called depth perception.
Yeah.
So we can see we can doesn't mean that we can see things that don't exist, but it just indicates that we can in our minds we have the ability to make short heuristics of the world without actually having to go see it. I hope that made sense. So there's an object in front of this other object. It's called the occluding angle. So there's an object in front. I'm trying to make like a little diagram here.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
Please.
an object in front of this object. You can, in your mind, you can infer what this thing looks like behind this one. You don't have to actually see this object. You can infer what this thing looks like if this thing's not in front of it. Doesn't mean that we can see through objects. It just means that it's a really hard book, and he doesn't really come out and say this like verbatim. But if you read it and then kind of like try to make a proposition, like a clear proposition out of it, we have the ability to visually shrink down things so that we can make it tasks, so we can do something.
Absolutely.
That's what the heuristic is. And you can think about that. It's not ideology. It's nothing to do with ideology, but it's one of the capabilities that we have. But ideology is something similar towards this. So I'm making a comparison towards our visual perception and what something like an ideological framework does. An ideological framework shrinks down the amount of sense data. It shrinks it down into a little tiny hole. So it shrinks it down so we can make a proposition. So for instance, I use this example all the time. Let's say you're walking down the street, you see someone who's way bigger than you walking down the street. Now you can't really see what this person is. You can't see the skin color. You can't see anything about them. You just see a significantly large figure than you. Yes. And your brain, the right side of your brain, is responsible for abstraction and creative thought and creative endeavor. Your right side of your brain is starting to put pieces together. What could this thing be? Could it be a monster? Could it be my dad? Could it be my uncle? What could it be? It's triggering us running all these simulations in your head of what this thing could be. And your left side of your brain is saying, oh, this is trying to piece together all these ideas that your other hemisphere is doing. Oh, it can't be this because it's doing induction, saying, well, it can't be this because this looks like that. It can't be this because it has this certain dimension. And these two hemispheres are working toward each other. This is what is causing your anxiety. This is what's causing your fear because you're in dysregulation right now. You don't know what's in front of you. So remember all that. Now, let's say that this person happens to be Black, and this person got offended that you were scared of him. Let's say this whole thing blew up, and you were on Fox News, and you were labeled the racist of Melbourne. Let's just pretend this.
Yeah.
So ask yourself, knowing everything I just said, what was causing your fear? Was it because he was Black? Was it because he was taller than you? Was it because he was a man? Was it because it was dark outside, he couldn't see anything? Was it because he had a hood up? Was it because he had dark clothes on? There is a infinite amount of variables that could have been causing your fear. And when ideology does, it makes the complex self-evident, shrinks it down. You were scared because you're a racist.
Yeah. No,
that's what ideology does.
Beautifully put.
And another thing that it also does, so this is what if you're in a homogeneous system, your sympathy towards the other variables adds on to your being bigot. No, but it's because he was Black and he was tall. You not acknowledging his skin color is making you even more racist.
Yeah.
Oh, so you were racist for seeing that he was a Black guy, and you saying that no, because your proclivity to even acknowledge something other than his skin color is also making you a racist person.
Yeah,
that is the loop. You're racist because you're a racist. You're racist because you're a racist. That's the self-perpetuating loop.
Yeah.
that we were just talking about. That's what it does. It blinds you to everything else. That's why when you hear, that's why you don't want to listen to it. So if you're caught in this little bubble, clearly what it is, why listen to Jordan Peterson?
Yeah.
Why listen to someone like Ben Shapiro?
Yeah.
Are you scared that maybe you're wrong? Why would you? This is where we get to the power. Why would I sacrifice my ideology? That means I'm going to be wrong. We talked about Nietzsche. He said, I'm going to butcher this quote. He said, people will ignore, he said, people will hold on to lies. I'm going to really screw up this quote. People will rather believe in lies because they don't want their stories, they don't want their stories destroyed. Something like that.
I think
said, people will, people will hold on to, beliefs because they don't want their beliefs to be destroyed. That's basically what he was
because he's critical of this idea, like the Enlightenment idea, that our will is to truth, and he says no, our will isn't to truth, it's to power, it's for survival, just to like our base instincts. I get the gist of what you're saying though.
Yeah. So I mean that's pretty much.
No, I think that's an apt analogy. I also would, if I could ask from you, Carl, are you familiar with the work of Slavoj Žižek?
I'm not with his work, but I watched his debate, if you want to call it that, or his conversation with Jordan, and I've seen clips in here and there.
Yeah, he because man, I really, because ideology, it's something I've thought about a lot too, and like yourself, I too, and might I add, unsuccessfully, I'm trying to write a book, and I'm really trying to explore that topic and break it down. But I'm just going to put this idea out here, and you tell me what you think about this. He's got this notion that it's a bit similar to what you said. It is a heuristic. So we have a heuristic where we project onto the world, and to give the devil its due, like, look, mate, that makes sense. Like, we got to survive. The world isn't a mere, like, we don't live in abstractions. We live in the real world. Yeah. The world is a ground for action. So we need some heuristics to act. If not, we'll just be stuck in like what's it called? Like this state of anxiety, eternal anxiety, and nothing will happen. So you gotta understand why people do that. But his whole idea is, it seems like fundamentally, the more we kind of, let's say, and I hope this is what we're doing, let's say as a species, the more we understand reality, the more we get to the essence of being, let's say the ontology I'm talking about, that it's all chaotic in some sense. Like it's like there's no structure, there's no stability. This whole let's say the Hegelian dream, like the end of history.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds really Hegel, what you were saying.
Yeah, Hegel, and even, of course, like Marx, right? Because Marx was influenced by Hegel, and this idea that one day, heaven will come. It's also a bit of a Christian idea too. I mean, for sure, the idea of like utopia will come. But he says, in reality, though, utopia is never coming. Like society is chaotic. In some sense, it's not just a mere sociological critique he's making. He's saying at like the ontology of nature, it's chaotic. So what we try to do is, because it's distressing, it's anxiety evoking to live in such a world, we try to project an ideology onto the world. But not only that, and this is why I really like the term you use, possessed. When the ideology possesses us, it even changes our internal psyche. It even changes our let's say, so the modern ideology, which I'm rather critical of, is be happy or be nice. It's such a, it's such a unwise, like, I don't think any culture anywhere.
You couldn't make it, people who say that, they can't make it any more obvious that they don't think when they say stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's also detrimental, mate. Have you watched the movie Little Miss Sunshine?
Bro, I've seen about 10 movies in my life.
Okay, fair enough, man. I mean, I know that you're currently doing a lot of reading these days, but it's a beautiful movie that captures that problem with telling people to be happy, because
It's called what?
it's called Little Miss Sunshine. I'll share the link with you.
Little
It's
Miss Sunshine.
it's
Oh,
like a
yeah,
dark
yeah.
comedy. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful movie, man. I probably watched it 5, 6 times. Makes me cry every time. And
Wow.
it's exactly, and in that movie, in some sense, is an antidote to ideology. An antidote to ideology, because it's like there's this pressure from, let's say, the modern ideology. One could even say it's a capitalist ideology, is to be happy. Be happy. That's what matters. So whenever we have even a moment of melancholy, a moment of sadness, we think there's an incongruence between us and reality, and we think something's wrong, as if, because my state of being should be bliss, happiness, and this state of euphoria. But the moment it's not there, we think there's something wrong. And I think that's what the whole idea of possession, why it's so corrosive and detrimental to the individual soul, to use a spiritual term. It's because in some sense one stops living, like one really stops existing in this world, and just becomes a cog in the machine, in an ideological machine. But no, I'm just putting that thought out there. But do you get what I mean by the whole idea of, do you get this is more for, I don't even know if this could be rationally or reasonably proven, but do you get the intuition sometimes that in some sense the world is absurd, to use a term by Camus, and that reality is just chaotic, and that there is really no this structure we're seeking for?
What you were describing was sounded a lot like the positive psychology, that I was looking into the other day. It sounds a lot like the behaviorists. I was watching this podcast. So basically, that like the world is a chaotic place, and what we have to, and part of the one of the things that we do is basically we have to create fantasies and then impose that on top of the world. That's literally the behavioral positive psychologist. That's what that doctrine is. And
This is
yeah,
BF,
I don't agree.
like BF Skinner, that school of thought.
That stuff. That's exactly what that is. And I don't agree with that at all, because I'm the one that's cynical as hell. Because it's like, oh, everything's just terrible. We kind of have to like make up fantasies about being, and then kind of impose that on top of the world. I don't really like that, because you have to be cautious of theories that black box terms and don't define them. So it's like, well, what is happy? Like, well, what is? No, that's not the word. That's not the term that's being black box. The term that's being black box is the real world. They put the real world in a box, and then they try to shove everything else in there. It's like, well, here's the real world. It's over here. It's like, what is that? How do I know that your brain isn't filtering? How do I know you're not saying? How do I know that you're making a genuine and a judicial representation of what the real world is? And you're getting into this. I don't like really. That's why I don't like reading people like that, or Skinner or Hegel, because they're so propositional.
Yeah. Do you
This is
think
something I
they're playing like a
recently
language
learned.
game? Yeah. Do you think they're playing a language game? Just it's a game of
Yeah,
semantics.
This is why I like Rebecca's work, because he brought up this thing I had no idea. His theory of relevance realization.
Oh man,
And
beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, and the four P's of knowing.
Yeah.
I feel like a broken record. I've been talking about this stuff for like the past month.
Yeah.
But it's so cool. So he has this model of the four P's of knowing.
Yeah. Do you
And the
mind? Do
first
you mind
P,
just elucidating that? This elucidating that to the people who haven't heard about him.
Rebecca, he's a professor at a University of Scranton. I don't want to say it, because I don't know if it's true or not. I'm not gonna say it.
He's a
So
professor. Yeah.
yeah, he's a professor at U of T, and he has this theory of relevance realization. He's I guess he's a cognitive science. He talked about it a lot. So basically, he has the four P's of epistemology of knowing. So the first P is what I think a lot. Let me do this. Let's give the devil his due here. I think most people should stay in the propositional. I know it's going to totally contrary to what I just said, but I think most people should stay here, because when you get into the lower three quadrants, it requires a little bit more discernment. I'll explain that in a little bit. But the first P is a propositional knowing. You are a human being. This is a cell phone. Proposition. I am happy. I'm happy. I'm doing this. That's propositions. Second P is the participatory knowing. And this is where he gets this idea. It's from Aristotle, from Plato. It's about coming into participation with something. So it's not just saying that this is a phone. I am now using this phone. I am participating with this phone. These are two distinct beings. This is a being. I'm a being. I'm going to order me a pepperoni pizza with this phone. I'm participating with this phone. That's different from saying that this is a cell phone. I'm participating with it. I have it in my hand.
Yeah.
I'm forming my hand in a specific way that affords me to hold this phone and to order something on it.
Yeah.
So that's like the second way of knowing. I'm participating with this phone. The third is the perspective on knowing. So I have a perspective on something. This is where a human being can abstract. So that means I can sit back and say, what is it like to be someone that's ordering a pizza? Animals can't do that. I don't know if you have a cat or a dog. Your dog can't say, I wonder what it's like to be
a human. Oh, yeah.
He's not self-conscious. So the third, you can think of perspective about knowing is self-consciousness. You have a perspective on it. Doesn't mean you know that this is a phone. It just means, I wonder if that's a phone. This is the creative dimension. This is the curiosity dimension. You're saying, I wonder what this could be. You are introspecting. You are abstracting. What does it feel like to order a pizza? What does it feel like to be a person that's thinking about what it feels like to order a pizza? We can abstract ad nauseum until we just get tired of doing it. That's the third one. And the last one is procedural knowing. So you know how to comb your head. I know how to tie my shoe. It's motor functions. I know how to ride a bike. The things I know how to do. I know how to order a pizza. That's the procedural knowing. So when we talk about stuff like positive psychology and Skinner's work, I haven't read any Skinner, so I can't critique Skinner. But I read a bit of Hegel and this whole phenomenology stuff. When you get into the semantic debate and all that stuff, I feel as if, and I'm going to put the atheists over here too, I think a lot of them are, John Vervaeke is one of his terms. He calls it a propositional tyranny. So it's like, this is the real world. No, it isn't. Or yes, it is. Well, no, it isn't. It's a propositional tyranny. And we're not including these other three sectors about the perspective, about participating within the world. And when you look at those other quadrants, ask yourself how much congruity is between my proposition and how I'm acting in the world, how I'm participating in the world. Is my perspective even aligned with my proposition? So you could say the world is absurd, but you don't necessarily act like the world is absurd, because you wake up and you expect gravity to work.
Yeah.
You expect to be alive 2 seconds from now. You expect when someone tells you something that they're going to do it. You're not expecting your chair to collapse right now, because that would be absurd. You don't have to think about, that's what your hippocampus does. It's constantly pre-planning actions. Calling pre-planning actions. It's keeping your homeostasis. It's keeping you at bay. So if something unpredicted happens. So you're not thinking about your glasses falling off of your face right now, because that would be absurd. Why would they do that? Unless you did something that afforded the opportunity for your glasses to fall off your face. So when we look at what is deeper underneath of our proposition of what we think, ask yourself this question: is the objective world doesn't necessarily care about what we think? Because we can argue all day long about men, can they be women, or men, can men do this, or how many chromosomes you got. We can talk about these things until we're blue in the face. But ask yourself this: how are we behaving in the world? You still open the door for women. How you gonna argue yourself out of that? If I stomp on your foot, if you stub your toe on the edge of the desk, we've all done that before.
You feel
You're gonna argue yourself out of that? Is this pain? This is not pain. This isn't pain. I'm making myself in pain. You can argue yourself out of that. You got diagnosed with cancer, stage 4 cancer. You're gonna die in 6 months. I'm making an example here.
Oh no, it's fine.
You gotta argue yourself out of cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Your wife divorced you. You gotta argue yourself that she really loves you. These other things matter.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Like, man, I don't know what you think about this, mate, but I feel like a lot of modernity tries to view human beings as these abstract, disembodied beings that live in like the ether. And then we speak in abstractions. So even, I'm a software engineer, so I have a bit of an understanding of the AI world. Yeah, that's my day job. And a lot of the progress we're making in AI is in the realm of language. It's not in the realm of, let's say, robotics. So, all these robots you see that are doing all these dancing and all these Boston Dynamics, for example, that's all programmed. That's not machine learning. That's not real AI, so to say. Real AI happens right now in the realm of language. And I find it interesting because a lot of guys in my world, in the IT world, in the AI world, tend to be very abstract. They tend to work with ideas, conceptualizations. I mean, programming is literally, it's called a programming language, right? So it's all propositions. And I feel like they've extrapolated that. Oh, and look, ideology. It's again ideology. They've taken that and extrapolated that to the rest of being, the rest of reality, as if that's all there is to existing in the world. And on the point you made about that the 4 Ps, I think this is something. And look, I haven't gone too deeply into Wittgenstein, but there's the younger Wittgenstein, the linguist, the younger
linguist,
when in the philosophical investigations, which is the latter one, he in his I think it was the logical. His first book was a Tractatus. He says the world is made of facts, so the world is just propositions, and this is what the world is. This was when he was much younger, but then he had a bit of a hiatus, and then he wrote the next book, Philosophical Investigations, and kudos to him, because not many philosophers, once they become acclaimed, change their mind, completely changed his mind and said, no, the world, everything I said before is wrong. And simply playing this, as you said, simply playing this, like Hegel or whoever that play this game of language, they themselves have trapped themselves, into just playing a language game. And they don't see that they're even playing it, because that's how, I guess, deeply embedded into our psyche that game is. And I do like, it's interesting. I really do. I'm going to be honest. I really do like Zizek. He has influenced me a lot. I've read a lot of his stuff, but sometimes I realize, but then I don't know why, until you just said this, the thing about even Zizek, he goes for all these lectures, he writes, I think he's written about 60 books, writes all these papers, has an H index of, I think, 150, one of the most cited social scientists in the world, sociologists in the world. But then when he says like everything is chaotic and there's this, like, he doesn't necessarily say that, but he at least implies that in his lectures and all that. But he doesn't act like everything is chaotic, because if everything is just a mess, if everything was absurd, why do anything, right? Like why it's like a very nihilistic kind of doctrine.
That's also predicated on the presumption that what you're saying is a genuine articulation of how you really feel. So to even say the world is absurd, well, to even make a proposition, you first believe it in truth. because you believe that to even make a proposition about anything, that presupposes that you believe that your articulation of the world being observed is an accurate description.
Yeah.
And this is what postmodernism. This is why that killed itself on that. I mean, it kind of contradicts itself the same exact way, because it says no grand narratives. That is a grand narrative.
Yeah, except postmodernism. Like, it was funny about. Yeah, what's funny about the critical theorists? Yeah, they're critical of everything except postmodernism, except their ideology. Yeah.
And Jordan gets the flack of, coining his term, the postmodern neo-Marxist.
Yeah.
They'll say, Jordan, Marxist and postmodernists are the same. Postmodernists reject grand narratives. So that means a postmodernist can never be a Marxist. Proposition. It doesn't account for the fact that this is something that Jordan says a lot. I'm going to assume that until I look into it. And I don't have to assume it. Literally, you can name one social scientist that isn't sympathetic towards leftist ideology. Can you name one person in the psychological department? So, just look at the way I know it's different in your country, but in here, the social scientists, I went Barnes and Noble the other month. And I was in the social science section in the store. Maybe that was the first mistake going to that section. But I went to there on the shelf. 90% of the bookshelf was LGBT, gay, lesbian. It's littered with this stuff. So I'm looking at that. I'm like, okay, so is this what's the difference between LGBT and social science? What's the difference? Is that the same thing?
Sorry, what was that? What was that?
No, I said I looked at this bookshelf and all the social science books were LGBT books.
Yes.
So in my mind, I asked myself, is LGBT just social science? What's the difference between those two things?
Oh, yeah. How do you demarcate that? Yes.
They merged into one. The other day, I guess we're just rambling here. I don't know about my point here, but the other day, ESPN, they started tweeting about rights to trans individuals. ESPN.
Yeah.
What's supposed to be letting me know if my favorite basketball team won last night. They're telling me about the rights of trans and and sticking up for what these. When you start seeing things merge, I think there's a lady said that. That's what fascism is.
Yeah, correct. When the corporations
in America and they merge together, it's like, how can you? Now the proposition is this isn't fascism because we're not forcing anyone to do anything. That's a proposition. The perspective on the right is, well, I understand that, and it's so important to understand to separate people's actions from their words, because that's the only thing that matters is their actions. Because you can tell me, this feels so deep. You can tell your wife that, honey, I love you. You can say that to her, but why every time she does something that pisses you off, you backhand her in the face? Those two things they don't go together. You can trick someone to be like, I hit you because I love you. You can try to brainwash someone. It's possible to do that. You can try to brainwash someone into making them pervert their definition of what love is. You can try to pervert that, but you can't deny the fact that these two things are just not. If you look at this holistically, these two things are just not incongruent with each other. So people's actions and their words are two separate things. So you can say this is fascism. I can say that I'm a man. You can say that the world is observed. And now we're just kind of reiterating that last point, but I think it's important. But what are your actions saying? Are your actions supporting your proposition? If they're not, then you have to ask yourself this. What do I value more? Do I value knowledge more, or do I value truth? Which one do I value? And this is the importance of Socrates and Socratic thinking, because he was the one that the sophist, he was the one that would approach people, out in the marketplace and ask people, like, what does it mean to live a good life? And when people, I don't know, it's like, how come you haven't thought about that? Like, people to ask you to ask these annoying questions. No wonder they killed this guy. When you're thinking about, they're making a separation. There's knowledge over here, and there's truth. Which one do you value more? Knowledge there's a verse in the Bible, I don't know what it is, it's bad, but it says, forever seeking knowledge, but never coming to the realization of truth. And it separates. When I read that, they're kind of like, so wait, they separated that. Forever seeking knowledge, but never coming to the knowledge of truth. They separated those two things. But why were those two things separated? What's the difference between something that's true and knowledge? Knowledge is a tool. But what the truth is a shield. And when I understood this, I'm like, holy crap. You can learn anything you want. Like, seriously, learning does not require any consistency, any logical consistency. You can learn anything. I can teach you that red is actually yellow. I can teach you that. Let's say I take a group of kids and we teach them that, up is down, left is right, bad is good, good is evil. They know that. That's something that they can know. You can have your knowledge over here. You guys can sit here and debate over semantics all you want. But truth, what's over here, what Nietzsche said, truth is what serves life, is what propagates. So truth is deeper than knowing something. Truth is what allows the logos. Truth is what allows things to even be known.
Yeah.
That's what truth is.
I mean,
what allows what to be known.
Yeah. I mean,
it's bigger than that.
Yeah.
So you can debate anything you want. And you're talking about truth, that's something different. Those two things are not the same thing.
I can see that. Yeah. And by the way, I think the verse you're referring to is 2 Timothy. Timothy.
Yeah. Timothy, yeah.
Chapter 3, verse 7. Always learning, but never able to come to a knowledge of the truth. So truth, capital T, that is. That's
why I capitalize truth. I capitalize truth over everything.
I can see that. Yeah. No, you know what? You're right, man. Like, sometimes maybe it's even a personality thing, because I know that in the big five, I'm high in openness, so I tend to be very, let's say, enamored and captivated by all these philosophies and all ideas. But then sometimes I gotta bring myself into the real world and exist in the real world and understand that I'm actually living in a world with some sense of stability, some structure.
What do you think causes you to? Because I want to know this. What do you think causes you to bring yourself back into that?
Mate, to be honest, and it's gonna sound very, very I don't know how you're gonna. It's love. It's love. So like I've realized that there's so many, like, if I could be a bit personal here, I got off a relationship and then I just started another new relationship with this girl I'm seeing, and what I mean by love is like for me, love isn't a mere emotion. I think of it more as like a metaphysical force. So which is probably why in English we say we fall in love. One doesn't choose to love. It's kind of like out of our control. It's not like I don't think love is something that you just, the same way one applies for a job. Let's say you go through the whole process. All the interviews. I think it's a bit more out of our control in some sense. So I realized when one philosophizes and play this game of philosophy and the whatever language. We very much have control, right? We very much, you and I can sit at our computers and conjure up propositions, syllogisms, whatever, conjure up ideas and, refine it, make it look all perfect, use rather sometimes rather pretentious philosophical words and make it look sophisticated.
Yeah.
But then the moment one falls in love, or the moment, and I'm not even talking about romantic love really, is one thing about English. I wish we had more words to describe the different kinds of love, like, eros, whatever. I'm even talking about like love for family, love for, if possible, and I don't know if this is like too idealistic, love for, let's say, humanity, not in an abstract sense, but actually like, to be Christian about it, loving one's neighbor.
Yeah.
I think it's at that moment when that happens, one feels like I'm a being with emotions. I'm a being that lives in the real world. I'm a being with other beings. And look, the other thing I realized about love is, love isn't just, people think of it as this, it's great, it's all happiness, it's joy, bliss. No, it's terrifying. It's terrifying because we become vulnerable. It takes courage. I mean, I think Peterson said this in one of his interviews. He's like, Peterson's caricatured very much, probably the most caricatured, of course. I mean, I don't know how to tell this to you. Probably the most like mischaracterized and caricatured person ever. They think of him as this sort of like this patriarchal, very like
the warrior.
Yeah, like, wagging his finger, telling you should do this, be responsible, pull yourself up by your bosom. But not at all. You look into love. Exactly. He talks so much about love. He talks so much about this idea of, why even loving takes courage. It takes being vulnerable with another person, being kind of like an open book with another person takes courage, and that's done through love. But yeah, man, to answer your question, I think it's that, and of course, to be a bit more, to get away from metaphysics into something a bit more practical, it's simple things like working out. It's simple things like doing martial arts, or playing a sport, or like dancing, doing some dancing. I did a bit of bachata, and it's so beautiful, man. Like, I mean, Viveki talks about this because he does, what does he practice? Yeah, but he also practices a certain, not what's it called, Mike? Not jiu-jitsu. I don't think he does jiu-jitsu.
Tai Chi? He does Tai Chi.
Tai Chi, exactly. So you can see even when he talks, the ways.
Yeah.
There is something to it, right? So because that practice he's been doing for so long, it's kind of become a part of him. Yeah. And to be practical, like and that's why I'm a bit averse to this idea of this over intellectualizing everything, like living in this world of the intellect all the time. I think sometimes it does more harm than good. Yeah. Hey man, I'm cognizant of time. How many more minutes, or can we do another 15? You found with that? Or? Yeah, man, fantastic. Because I've actually got two I wrote down a few points, but this is probably, we spoke about some rather deep and philosophical topics, but this is going to sound rather crass. But I have to ask you this, and this is it's a silly question, really. It's like asking from me, what's it like to be a Sri Lankan migrant in Australia? I don't know. I don't speak for Sri Lankan migrants in Australia. Like, who knows, right? However, I thought about this. I really did, because one reason I'm asking you this question is because you are, in my view now, with your influence, with your growing influence, you're sort of like I wouldn't call you a political commentator, even though you touch on politics. You're more of a cultural commentator. All right. So therefore, you have takes on things, right? You have insight. And secondly, as much as I agree a lot about the whole idea of that we are essentially all individuals, I also believe we have, I'd call it, trans-subjective experiences. So yes, I can never speak for all Sri Lankan migrants in Australia, or Sri Lankan Australians, or whatever, but the mere fact of living in a society that has certain norms, certain structures, there may be common things I may have with another, Sri Lankan migrant, probably my age, a man like myself, and with all these common attributes. So we may find some commonality. So that's why I call it transsubjective, because it's not necessarily like an objective reality. I don't know if it is, but we have a common subjective experience. Not all of it, but certain parts of it overlap.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Experience.
Yeah, correct. So that's why I thought that this question is justified. But I'm just gonna put it out there. So because I've never lived in America, I don't know. All I see about America is from, like, obviously from Hollywood, a bit of corporate media propaganda, and very much now from people like yourself.
Shortage of that.
Yeah, mate. Tell me about it. People like yourself, podcasts, reading about it, independent media, and of course, race has been in the news, has been in the last couple of years, as you highlighted in the beginning of our conversation. What's it like being Black in America? I know. I wanted to ask you with like a serious, but I just can't. It's an absurd question. It's a ridiculous question. But what's it like in America? As if you speak to Black people, but still, let me ask you that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like to try to actually answer your question, I think, what is it like? I honestly can't answer that question now because I don't even think of myself as a Black person, not as I used to. Yeah. Now, if you were to ask me this question in 2020, when I was, all this woke stuff was really fresh in my mind, I could have gave you the real biblical answer. Well, it's an oppressive, evil place, but I'm not. We're gonna leave. Like I want to give you that answer. But what's it like being Black in America? I guess. I mean, so yeah. Let's address some of these things. So I'm really big on diagnosis in prescriptions. So let me allow me to explain this.
Yes, please.
How we diagnose a problem, what we prescribe is entirely predicated on how we describe the problem, how we frame the sentence. Now, I don't mean to critique your question, but I promise I'm going to answer it. So let's say
it's a tough question.
America is systemically racist. Okay, that's our diagnosis. We've schemed everything. We're looking at this is rife with racism, and this thing just has to be fundamentally changed from within. So we have a problem, an inherent problem that's at the detriment of the country, and it needs to be changed right now as urgent. And if we don't change it, that's indicative of the fact that we want it to stay this way. So that's our problem. That's our diagnosis here. What do you prescribe? The only thing you can prescribe is a revolution.
Yeah.
Everything you prescribe is justified. Social distance like that. Before a human being can do evil, he first has to believe that what he's doing is good. So if you diagnose the problem in the most sick, twisted, perverted, contorted way possible, that then affords you to prescribe the most drastic and extreme and most radical prescription you possibly can.
Anything is justified.
Instead of focusing on, instead of having that urge to want to get a revolution out, conceal that a little bit and ask yourself, how should we diagnose this problem? Should we say that the country is racist, or should we say some states can be racist? Okay, so let's go into the states. What specific states? Okay, well, Nebraska, Texas. Okay, let's get to the real states here. Okay, so in these states, what counties is it? Okay, well, is this county is so. Okay, let's get into the county. Which towns are racist? Well, it's this town. Is this town down here in the suburbs next to I don't know any cities there. It's here. Okay, so let's get into this. What community said it? If you keep going, it usually is 2 or like 10 people who were acting like a dick that day. Now that's different from saying that this, and now you can say that there's been multiple instances throughout let's say there was 100 people that were doing it. Fine, let's say 1,000 people. You can find 1,000 people who are being a racist that day. If you say that's still nothing compared to saying that this entire country of 330 million people are complicit in this systemic racist system. Those two things are completely different. So that's how we diagnose the problem. Because what are you not going to do if the whole entire country? That's a revolution. That's by definition a revolution.
And sometimes
you can describe anything.
Yeah, and sometimes revolutions are working. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So American Revolution, we had to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it makes sense. Let's look at it this way. So, I diagnose I'm a Black American. I'm a Black person living in America. That's my diagnosis here. So how am I gonna prescribe? How am I gonna prescribe this? Is that the proximal level of describing me? I look at myself as a Black American. What does that mean? I now have to fill in. We talked about making the black box. I now have to put this word in a box and put in things that could possibly go in this bucket of being a Black American. I have to now fill that definition with something.
Yeah.
So now I'm attributing attributes towards a group, because that is that level of analysis is a group. And that's the problem with group identity. It's because you're looking at the group. You're looking at it's like a one-dimensional representation of the actual thing. Where I'm a member of a Black community. Like, no, I'm not. I am Kyle Jordan Maxwell. Kyle Jordan Maxwell doesn't think the same way Tyreek Johnson thinks down the street.
Yeah.
And Tyreek Johnson doesn't think this or do or believe or eat or even say half of the things that, I don't know, Tanisha down the street thinks. There is no Black community. Let's think there is one. We are, if we're all the same damn skin pigment. Okay. Well, other than that, okay, yes, we have a culture. Let me not strawman this too much. Yes, there's a culture we have separate cultures. You know, Hispanics have their culture, Indian people have their culture, Chinese people have their culture. Yes, we understand that, but is that our culture because of our skin color? So what is it? Is it culture or is it skin color? What is more important? What is it? Is it culture or is it skin color? What happens when you put white people white people get within the Black community? What type of thing do they start doing? They start liking hip hop music. They probably start dressing a little differently. They're not Black. So the fact that that's where we get to appropriation and all this nonsense. Yeah. So the fact that someone from the Black community and someone from the white community can leave the white community, come to the Black community, and share 100% of the attributes, not looking at their skin color, that means that there has to be something below the skin color that is really uniting them. Because it's not skin color. So what is actually uniting these people? It's not skin. It's culture that's uniting them. You can't go deeper than the culture. Yeah. So the problem is we're looking, and you look at the group like attributes lead to, what's the flip side of that? Group guilt. White people need to change. This is the idea of identifying as an individual. Because when you identify as a group, you and millions of other people like yourself suffer the consequences. When you identify as Rahul, you sleep in your own bed. So if you say something that's out of line, if you offend someone, then that is on you. Yeah. The utility of identifying as an individual is not to be some like self-centered jackass. That's not the idea here. It's so that, and look at the flip side. So when you achieve something, it's not because you had some type of group privilege or you have some type of group advantage. It's because You did something. You worked. You worked your ass off and got to where you were. Are you successful in engineering because you're where'd you say you were from?
Sri Lanka. Yeah.
Sri Lanka? Is that because so the only reason why you're successful in engineering is because you're from Sri Lanka? No, it's because you put the time and the hours and the dedication. It could be your personality, because you probably like objects and you like. It could be, you can break it down to
A
personality,
variety of things.
whatever.
Yeah.
That's still just proving my point. You had to put in the hours and put in the work. You had to do that. That is the idea of identifying as an individual, because you sleep in your own bed. Because it's better to have individuals take guilt than to have the whole entire group feel guilt. Because when you identify as a group, all you are just arbitrary. It doesn't matter. You said it, doesn't matter. Sam or this is that other guy said it. What you think is what they all think. What you don't like is what they all don't like. If you say something that's messed up, they all said it. The Sri Lankan community has to do something. No, Rahul has to do something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's also a very Christian idea, right? Like, I mean, this is what I have great affinity with Christianity, is because of the idea, made the individuals made in the image of God, men and women. It's not, I don't know, it's not the Jew. Well, there is the element of the Jewish tribe and all that, but I don't want to get too much into theology. But there's any reading of the Bible would have that individual connection of the individual with the divine, with the transcendent, and being made in the image of God. So I mean, I don't know if that the point you just made can get any more profound than that, because we are literally talking about the divine. We're talking about the essence of reality in some sense, and how much that's connected to the individual. No, look, Kyle, I mean, the reason I had to ask you that was, first of all, you probably noticed I didn't use the term African American. I don't like that term because, wait, what does that mean? You're from Africa, or you're not American, or like what are white people like? Are they British American, or I just black or white? So I think I and actually this idea, I was Daryl Davis. Are you familiar with him? The guy who converted he converted
he converted the KKK member.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, look, he even goes as far as saying there shouldn't be a thing called Black History Month. He just says, black people, why just 1 month? Celebrate black culture. Obviously, is celebrated in so many different ways. And he even says, why use the term African American? We're American. That's what we are. And black, white, whatever. Anyway, I'm going off here, just but like I had to ask you that question because I wanted you in some sense give your subjective experience as Kyle, as an individual, but also kind of touching on the whole trans-subjective thing I was talking about, what it means. But I'm glad that you took that question and you generalized it and made actually you made a critique of where that question might come from. Because look, in some sense, all these things like diversity and all of that try to do this kind of superficial diversity, which I think is I'm not a fan. I'm a fan of diversity, but the corporate diversity, it's insincere, it's shallow, it's posturing, and all of that. It kind of comes from that idea that also, a Sri Lankan guy or a black guy or a woman or whatever can speak or represent this group, and it's not the case. It can't be, isn't it? Because unless you've got some kind of omniscience where you can, read all other black people's minds or something, it literally.
The funny thing about that is diversity couldn't be the most prejudiced thing you could ever endeavor. Because look at it this way. Let's say that I'm running a company and I want to bring in a black woman to be the diversity leader. My presupposition is Tanisha, she's black, so she is going to come with X, Y, and Z. This is the sentence that brought me out of wokeism. And Jordan, this is what Jordan said. He said in fact, that the idea that there are more differences between groups than there are between individuals is a fundamental racist idea. And that is what diverse, that's what the whole DEI thing is predicated on. Because when you're bringing this Black person, this token employee on, what you're saying is, what you're first telling yourself is, they are going to come with X, Y, and Z. That is literally the definition of what prejudice is.
Yeah.
There is no way of getting around that. You're saying, you're telling yourself, she's going to know. We have an Asian, we have a Sri Lankan person, and we have a Hispanic person. But Tanisha's going to bring something different because she's Black. That's like, what are you assuming? You're assuming that Asian people, Hispanic people, Sri Lankan people, and Black people, you have to assume that these people are so different from each other that nothing that they know can possibly overlap. That's what you're telling yourself. You're saying you're not going to understand what Chi over here from Taiwan is saying, and Chi is not going to understand Tanisha because Tanisha's not going to understand Juan. You're saying that these people, nothing overlaps. You guys are so different that nothing you guys know overlaps. That is the idiom of diversity. That's not how you get diversity.
Yeah. I mean, if that's the presupposition,
quite the opposite.
Yeah, why even try, right? Like, I'm thinking exactly quite the opposite. That's what I was thinking, because if you look at most, in the West at least, or let's say in melting pots like Australia, America, most of what our day-to-day life is just people from different backgrounds with different skin colors, whatever, all these superficial things, just getting by, gonna work together and communicating, getting things done. But then if the presupposition is what you stated, then, in my opinion, like, why even try? Like, actually, we should all become, you should then, Richard Spencer is right, the white supremacist, or the whatever, the white nationalist. We should just all, stick to our groups and don't, the whole neoliberal dream of this global community, there's no use for it. Kyle, I do want to, here's probably where I have a lot of questions, man. I've got a whole list, and look, man, I'm really, really deeply enjoying this conversation. So I really hope.
Me too, man.
Yeah, man. I really.
About me, I'm gonna talk. I can talk. We can talk about stuff like this forever.
Oh man, tell me about it. Which is why I'm really hoping, in a couple of weeks we'll do a second one. I will, because I have a whole list of questions.
I don't think we hit a single thing.
Oh no, we did.
We did. Okay.
We don't have to. It's just the list is only merely not even a framework, really. It's just in some things I really want to touch on and extract out of it. But no, again, I think we spoke about some things that I never thought we'd get to Jung and shadow integration, but we got there. So here we go.
Yeah, we did.
Can you steel man the woke, man? So, like, you and I have been rather critical of woke ideology, and I wouldn't say we've been straw manning them, because to be fair, I think we've looked into
quite the opposite.
But quite the opposite, isn't it? But would you say the woke, what is this? Robin DiAngelo, all these thought leaders in the woke movement, is there anything you think that they get right?
That's great. I think they get a lot right, and not in like a snarky kind of way.
No.
I'll be snarky for the first one. They say that there is a wide racial separation in the United States, and a particular group is being prioritized as a privilege. I mean, that's kind of the basics of DiAngelo thinking. I mean, that's the Black people are getting the privilege. If you think about it that way, I mean, just look at the amount of Asians that are getting rejected from universities.
Isn't that a classic
affirmative action? Yeah. Like, there was a letter the other day about, it was some university it was some university, and the Asian people were saying, like take your kids out of the public schools. We're gonna homeschool all our kids. Or basically a letter saying, this stuff is corrupt. We're not going to participate in it anymore, and we're just going to homeschool our kids because you guys are literally rejecting the smart, the capable kids and prioritizing them over the students of color and what in the name of diversity. So when they say that there's racial superiority going on here, like, yeah, it's true. It's with you guys. So I'll give them that. Go D'Angelo. Now, as far as the anti-racism stuff goes, I have this book, How to Be Anti-Racist.
Anti-racist, yeah.
Ibram
Kennedy, right?
Ibram Kennedy, yeah.
Yep. I haven't read it, but
I have a life, so that's why I haven't opened that one yet. But just to kind of steal, man, at Kennedy's, his whole entire philosophy, I guess you would say, okay, I'll give them this. It's not enough just to be racist. You have to be against racism. That's fair. Now, when his definition of anti-racism, I probably have some questions about that. But it's just, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good, man. You're here. Yeah. Keep going. Yep.
So, yeah, I see if something racist occurred, or if something that someone did something and someone imposed their identity over someone else's identity solely off of the exchange of race, that's bad. Now, is that just enough to acknowledge that that's bad? I don't know. Perhaps you should say something. Perhaps you should develop some type of activism about that. Yeah, I think you should call that out and say, hey, that's not, just don't be a bystander. So if you know someone that's, or something racist happening, maybe you should speak up about it. I mean, that's a reasonable, is that really a theory?
Yeah, it's like
you're saying, yeah. If you see wrongdoing, stand up towards it. It's like,
isn't that Christianity pretty much?
Yeah, it's like like you're just kind of recreating the wheel here. My AirPods gave out. Can you hear me?
I can still hear you, man. Yeah, I think you're fine.
Yeah, I think we're probably have to cut it.
Well, probably, yeah. This is the last question. don't. We've gone almost 2 hours, so yeah.
Yeah, I'll statement them like this. They're right about. That's a really hard question. They're right about their most vague propositions about racism. It's bad. Should you do something to fight back against it? Sure. Why the hell not?
I mean that's
now what you define racism is. It's like, it's when you look at a system in one group of people exceeded better than the rest.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, by your definition, the NFL is racist. By your definition, every soccer league in the world is racist. By your own definition, the NBA is racist. Yeah, the trees are racist because they're
some trees are taller than others.
Yeah. Kendi, you're racist because you're black.
Yeah.
Because I'm talking shit now.
Yeah. No, man.
Yeah, I was good talking to you. I have a terrible audio. I can only hear you through my left.
That's totally AirPod right now. Yeah. Look, Kyle, as I said, man, I really appreciate this, and a bit of I should have said this beforehand. I haven't really done many of these before, so I apologize if I cut you off, if I was not courteous, anything like that. No,
you're good. I like
that. Man, thank you. Yeah, I'm still learning how to do this and really extract the most value from a person.
Lightning.
Whoops. Yeah. Oh. It's
lightning out here. Like
okay, gotcha. Yeah, and now, man, I really enjoyed this. I can't hear it. No, it's fine. Yeah, you're fine. I think
can't hear the thunder.
No, not at all, mate. I think Zoom does a really good job where they filter out all the background noise, so it's smooth, man. I can hear your silky smooth voice. Right. So, yeah. No, man. As I said, really appreciate it, and I'm a bit disappointed that I couldn't get to the book because I really want to talk about that because I absolutely love the title well-rounded fool. I like how
Yeah, thanks, man.
humor and humor and humility both connected together. I think that's a sign
Yeah,
of but yeah, man, as I said, much appreciated. We'll
yeah, I
definitely
appreciate this conversation, man. You're a great
very
interviewer.
oh, cheers, brother. Thank you so much. And good luck with everything, man. I'll obviously leave all the links down below, including to your company, Daily Break. We couldn't get to that. I wanted to talk a bit more about your company too, and all the
Okay.
other stuff you do in media. But hey, man, that's a good thing about having enough time for another conversation later on. But
Yeah, thank you, Rahul. Keep
hey, take care, brother.
searching, keep searching in the name of love. I like
Bro,
that sentiment.
hey,
Yeah, that was great.
I'm a bit of a hippie, to be honest. So it's all love,
Yeah,
brother.
man, me too.
Hey, come on, right? At the end of the day, fundamentally,
man.
I think that's what it's all about. So yeah, love and truth, love and truth.
All right, man. I gotta get going. It's
Yeah, man.
5 o'clock
Let
over
you
here.
go. Yeah, I know.
All right, man. You have a great day. It's like morning time.
7:45. I got to work. You know, I mean, I don't even know after this conversation if I can switch back to like work mode because I'm like so mentally stimulated.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try though. Yeah, take care, brother. Cheers.
All right, man. You too, man.